You know how MAGA keeps being accused of being weird? Well, this is exhibit, whatever you want to call it, of that, because Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast, Triggered. Yes, we're checking in on Donald Trump Jr.'s podcast again. He interviewed Jim Jordan, and in this interview, he got a little obsessed briefly with, well, you'll see, but the the perceived masculinity or manhood of Tim Walz. And you can tell it really irritates Donald Trump Jr. that people would perceive Walz's manhood to be significant, especially more significant than Don Jr.'s. Hello, man's man alert. And so hear what he has to say, then we'll look at more from this interview.
First black female running. We got, Midwestern Tim and all this stuff. And now they got their convention. But at some point, it gets down to what are the 4 years we had with President Trump and the 4 years we had with Biden Harris. And we can make those points, I think, clearly when JD gets a chance to debate Tim Walz and when President Trump debates Vice President Harris.
Yeah, they're doing this, Tim Walz is this folksy Midwestern guy. MAGA is really afraid of his masculinity. I'm looking at these pictures. I'm like, I get when he's playing it up on camera.
I'm sorry, I'll play this whole thing for you, but which pictures are you looking at? What are you talking about? They say Tim Walz is so masculine, but I've seen the photos. I don't think so. I bet my abs are better than his are.
President Harris.
Yeah, they're doing this, Tim Walz is this folksy Midwestern guy. MAGA is really afraid of his masculinity. I'm looking at these pictures. I'm like, I get when he's playing it up on camera, but you look at some of the, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't seem all that masculine to me. I don't know that, it's folksy Midwestern values. I've spent a lot of time with you in Ohio. I don't know too many guys like you that would put tampons in boys' bathrooms as an example of folksy Midwestern values. I don't think you'd vacation in China 30 times. I don't think.
And then on to those talking points that they can't get over the tampon Tim thing. That they're just lying about that subject. But even Jim Jordan seems slightly uncomfortable. As Don Jr. says, listen, Jim, you know what being a man is, and Tim Walz is not a man like you are, Jim. You get the point. I have a bigger truck than Tim's. I have a bigger beer koozie than Tim's. I have bigger guns than Tim's and bigger other things than Tim's. Yeah, no one's advocating on behalf of the Vice President Kamala Harris campaign with her running mate being Tim Walz with the argument that Tim Walz is so masculine, you just got to vote for him. I think what Don Jr. is confused about, many things probably, but what he seems to be confused about here in particular is people pointing to the fact that many of the activities and identity characteristics that people often associate with conservatism, like being into guns or going hunting, those aren't actually necessarily conservative owned things, right? You can like hunting and still be for common sense gun regulations. You can go to the Minnesota State Fair and eat some good old meat and still want to address, climate change. That's what Tim Walz represents, that these branding exercises from the Republican Party don't always have to, and rarely do, associate with the reality of which sets of policies are more logical. But for Don Jr., he's very upset with the manhood of Tim Walz. We are in the home stretch to 1 million subscribers. If you want to support in the effort to get us there, you can do so by clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already to continue getting the word out. Thank you so much. Back to the video. Then we move on from that. I know you're uncomfortable. Let's move on. I agree to this.
You're literally there. You're the other person in charge. And I'd also argue that right now you could credibly say Kamala Harris could be the most powerful vice president in American history in the sense that she's the number two to an empty suit. A guy that's, clearly, dementia riddled, whatever it may be. It's sad, but it's accurate. Joe Biden, no, he's usually fairly decent in meetings between 10 and 4. I'm like, you mean, in a 6-hour window? This is America. We're dealing with, so, the terrorists, the bad guys, They're going to wait till 4.
Jim Jordan is Jim Jordan's doing his best hold. I'm gonna get this out. Don't worry. Jim Jordan is doing his best impression of a human person's smile. Okay, this is good. This is how the people smile, right? Because Donald Trump Jr. thinks he's being funny, so I have to indulge him. Now, without addressing everything he just said there, because we've heard it so many times, and everyone sort of stands where they stand on the whole Biden issue. If Kamala Harris has been in the shadows secretly controlling everything all along, then sheesh, she's been getting some incredible results. Axios reports U.S. winning world economic war. And it goes through some of the specifics that we've talked about, just how strong compared to the rest of the world the United States has been doing. So good on her if she's been secretly controlling everything. And maybe that's why she should officially get the title now, to use his logic. Then we go to this.
Now those two administrations are running for who's going to be the next president. The country can see clear. I always say this campaign in my mind is so darn simple. We went from safe streets to record crime. We went from a secure border to no border. We went from $2 gas to $4 gas. We went from stable prices to record inflation. And we went from a commander-in-chief and President Trump who projected strength, where Russia didn't go into Ukraine, Hamas and Hezbollah didn't attack our best friend Israel. We went from that to Biden-Harris. So that's the choice. And right now it's all the pep rally, and it's, we got rid of Joe Biden, thank goodness. We got the first black female running. We got, Midwestern Tim.
Okay, and that goes on to when Don Jr. starts having his little moment. But by the way, Jaden, if you're noticing, there's like little static weird noises in my earpiece, making it sort of hard to hear these clips. But from what I could gather, the normal list of things there from Jim Jordan, think about, it's not that there aren't some things we could engage with. There are. We've had what I remember at the time was a pretty long conversation about how Russia's invasion of Ukraine took place. What was the build up to it? Why I think it's a silly talking point that Trump, if he were in power, could just prevent things like that from happening without being able to explain how Putin was actually waiting for Trump to further divide the very allies that would be necessary to support Ukraine in a moment of invasion, and how the Biden-Harris administration has done what they should do with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And there's a whole history there, and there's a whole discussion that if you think, hey, but Trump was president, they didn't invade, and then they invaded Biden, why can't we engage at that point? We can, totally. But also, clearly, someone like Jim Jordan has no interest in any thoughtful conversation, because he lists off there a bunch of things, and so many of them were blatant lies. One of them being record inflation. One of them being that Trump left office with super low crime, and then we've seen super high crime. How do you have the lack of moral backbone to blatantly gaslight people like that? Because if you're an audience member, you don't need to hear this again. The record spike was under Trump, at least in homicide rates. And then across-the-board crime shot up under Trump at the end of his presidency. And you can talk about that pandemic condition, sure. And then under Biden-Harris, it's dropped at a rate we rarely see. So my point is, sometimes I'll hear little nuggets in what they say and go, that would be interesting to sort of spend 10 minutes talking about with somebody. But at least with someone like Jim Jordan, that would be a wasted 10 minutes, because he's going to keep repeating these things no matter the truth value. Here's more.
And the things I heard, I'm like, these people don't know what they're talking about. Again, it's normal versus crazy. I mean, you think about their policies. It is crazy to defund the police. It is crazy not to have a border. It is crazy to want non-citizens to vote. All
right, there's another good example. He says it's crazy to defund the police. Record federal investment in public safety and law enforcement under Biden-Harris, so they don't want to defund the police, clearly. But Jim, your party wants to defund some of the law enforcement with the FBI. Then he says not wanting a border. Yeah, that would be crazy. Not what we want, as seen by our policy proposals. And then, what was the third thing he said?
It's normal versus crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about their policies. It is crazy to defund the police. It is crazy not to have a border. It is crazy to want non-citizens to vote.
And that doesn't happen, and we don't want that.
It is crazy to say men should compete against girls in sport. How about this
And that is men against girls. True.
one? Yeah, I said this at a speech. It is crazy to let a Chinese spy balloon fly clear across the country and then shoot it down.
Yeah.
You and I would have said, like, I
Take it
think
out
we
early.
should shoot it down. I know President Trump would have shot it down before it went across the country. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say, no.
How are you still on that talking point? One flew over the United States, and Trump was never able to catch it. But Biden shot it down. Then one more.
This is all part of this.
Oh, one thing I did want to say. It's true, though. The crazy versus normal framing is true. He just has the different characters in the wrong category as to who makes up either side.
Sustained attack against President Trump. I tell everyone all the time, it started with they spied on his campaign. Then it was Mueller, and your whole family had to live through that.
Yeah.
Then it was Mueller, 19 lawyers, 30 agents, $40 million they spent harassing it to find absolutely zero collusion, coordination, none whatsoever. Then it was impeachment. Then it was raiding his home. Then they said, oh, let's try. The best way to beat someone is not to let him play. And they took lawfare with his 14th Amendment. Craziest thing I've ever heard. And thank goodness the Supreme Court said 9-0. That is ridiculous. Then it was the 4 crazy indictments. Fonnie Willis, or as some people say now, Fonnie Wade, right? Fonnie Wade in her case, Alvin Bragg in his ridiculous case, Jack Smith, and on it goes. But throughout it all, the facts keep coming out, and every single time it's like, President Trump didn't do anything wrong. You guys are engaged in lawfare. And the worst example, of course, is the Bragg case. And as you point out, Don, Judge Merchan, who definitely,
So, a list like that, I give that list to people as a way to wake them up to the fact that probably their conspiracy theories are wrong, right? You go, oh, the 2016 primary, the 2020 election, oh, and the 2016 popular vote, because Trump couldn't accept that either. The 2 civil cases, the 4 criminal cases, every story, all of it's fake and rigged and slanted against Trump. I go through the same list he did as proof to his followers. See, do you really think it's more likely that all that's rigged from literally hundreds of different people are all in on this rigging operation, or one guy does bad stuff a lot and we're just seeing his character play out over and over again and then he gets into trouble for it? And for Jim Jordan, he lists the same list as proof that Trump is so victimized. Wild. Let me know what you thought of all of that in the comments. So, quite the wild ride. And if you want to become a member and support this show, you could do it by clicking the join button below.